put design research at the service of any other discipline doing research here, because again, the human, it's part of any problems we're facing, even if sometimes it seems that technology is taking the lead. So we had touched on different topics in the previous days, designing for healthcare and well-being in Monday. Tuesday was creativity and play. Wednesday, yesterday, we talked a lot, and it was really engaged conversations with different types of stakeholders about communities, how design can help working with communities in a participatory manner, and designing civic futures. And today is the day of data and algorithms and music. It sounds it's an interesting combination. And I wanted to thank, especially for the session this morning, the folks from MIT Sensible City Lab joining us today, and they will drive together with Sara Lenzi and Dagstuhl from Bilbao the session. And thank you for everyone joining here in person and online. And thank you for the chair of our department and the dean of our college for joining us this morning. So without further ado, the floor is for Sara and team. And by the way, I'm Paolo Ciuccarelli. I'm the founding director of the Center for Design that is behind this initiative of the Design Research Week. And welcome again, and Sara, the stage is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this early in the morning with this chilly day. We crossed the city from Cambridge, and it was quite, back in Bilbao, it was about 20 degrees. Anyway, always great to be here. Thank you, Paolo, for inviting us. And I'm here with my colleague Aiur Retegi, who is the principal investigator of our design research group back at the University of Dagstuhl in Bilbao. And I guess he will give us the introduction before I hand it over to our friends at MIT Sensible City Lab. This is the second workshop actually we host at Northeastern, the two groups together. The other one was last summer during the design research conference. And then I will introduce the activity part of things. Aiur, please.
Good morning, everyone. As Sara introduced you, my name is Aiur Retegi. I come from Dagstuhl University, from our lab, and the idea is that I will just make a short introduction to what this project is about before we talk about the labs and everything. So today's workshop is organized within the Design Research Week, and we are here, Israel, Sara and me are representing our research group, which is a small research group within an engineering faculty. We have, this is not, this is a different presentation anyway. So we had a small team of initially industrial design engineering faculty, but now we are opening up to more disciplines, like more hardcore engineering like Israel, and more humanities with Sara. And yeah, our idea is to start researching more things that are related to our activity. So that's it.
You don't have the research lines, slides.
No. It's somewhere here, maybe here. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, here.
We're still working on the picture.
Yes.
We have a session to take a new one because here is everybody everywhere. As we fly back, we already have
an appointment next week for this. So as you can see, we are a small team from different backgrounds, but basically trying to do that together. Our research, let me move this. Our research areas are we are still defining them because we are kind of merging together. One part of it is design culture. It's about how design can be a tool to make companies more, how can I say it?
Design driven.
Yeah, design driven. Because I don't know about Boston, but in Basque Country and in Spain, design is still something like considered that is more in the like making things beautiful side, and we have been fighting kind of about with this for a long time. Of course, this is a big part of it, but it's not that simple, and we want to make that a little bit more clear in the area. Then we want also focus on relationship between technology and design. Now we are exploring a bit of virtual reality, experience design, and digital manufacturing tools that we have in our university. How can we get advantage of these tools to make new things? And then the most like explorative part of our research is we are calling it futures design, and it's basically about sustainability and livable futures, but not only in the environmental aspect of sustainability, but also on the social aspect of it. So that's pretty much what we do, what we're trying to do. Yeah.
We can have the introduction.
Yes. Now we will have an introduction from the MIT Sensible Labs.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Simone. I'm a research scientist at Sensible. Here is Uria.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Sabrina. I am a current research fellow at Sensible. So thank you for having us, and we'll just briefly give an overview of our lab and then an introduction to a few of the projects that we have been working on. So our lab, or if any of you have been to MIT and seen the famous dome, our lab is located just down the hallway from there. And so, but all of the people within the lab come from a range of both cultural and academic backgrounds. We have labs situated around the world and people coming from all over. The academic backgrounds range from math to physics, computer science, to more of the humanities side in sociology, design, urban planning, etc. And all of us really come together to answer the question of how we can transform future cities through digitization and digital technologies. Today, cities occupy 3% of the land, 55% of global population, while still consuming 70% of energy consumption and producing 75% of CO2 emissions. And it's because of these statistics that our lab is really trying to hone in on that impact, because we are really going to make or break cities, and they'll really impact the future of our entire world. Throughout history, cities have served as more physical spaces for social systems, but now with the information age, digitization has been rapidly increasing. And so not only have people become more connected within cities, but also between them as well. So what does that mean for our infrastructure and for city planning and design in general? And so our lab is looking to find more meaning and possibilities through research and design. And to us, research is not just behind our computers, writing papers. It's also looking at where we're able to go and sense and collect new data and going out into the field. So some of that in the past has been along bridges, within sewage systems, or within canals, looking at water quality and really connecting with the people for enriching projects. Our partners range from more on the industry side, from companies to city governments, and also research partners in academia as well. And every year we publish, oops, there's a little bit of a lag. Every year we publish academic research papers. And so you can feel free to go and read some of those if you're interested. And then lastly, Our 4 main locations around the world right now are based in MIT, in Cambridge, but we also have locations in Amsterdam and Dubai. And last month, we just launched a lab in Rio. And then now I'll pass it over to Simone to talk a little bit more about our projects that we've been working on, and hopefully it can give you some inspiration for the workshop later on.
Thank you, Sabrina. Yes, just a couple of remarks on or addition to Sabrina's. So we cover a broad range of topics at the lab, but I think what all these projects have in common is the intention of designing something. Something that we design could be a new methodology, for example, to assess exposure to air pollution. It could be a new device. You saw in the previous image here. We range from autonomous designing and also prototyping, fabricating autonomous boats to sensors that collect data from the sewage. So I think we embrace the kind of design or design methodology in a very broad scope, but also making our own the process of building things and also the materiality, okay, to explore this question by developing sensor, by deploying those sensors in the physical environment. So going back to projects, we have selected a couple of rather new projects that we feel it could be of inspiration for you for today. One of these is B++, also nicknamed your bugs are our features. And this project looked at designing a new method to monitor biodiversity in cities. Why biodiversity? We know by fact that both the amount of insects in cities, insects, bugs, bees, etc., are decreasing in number, but also are decreasing in diversity of species. At the same time, we know that these organisms are almost like a biological sensor for a number of transformations that happens into the physical environment, which range from climate change, warmer temperature, heat waves, but also noise pollution, as well as air quality. At the same time, the way this type of assessment, this type of measures about the biodiversity in cities have been done, rely heavily on manual methods, either with the epidemiologist observing those insects or recording or observing the insect directly or through recording. So what we're trying here and what we really have done in the first stage is to develop a visual AI, a machine learning method that will allow us to identify different insect species, but also to track them and to track the amount of time that they spend in a certain area, as well as their interaction with the physical environment. This is a project that started this year, so I'm just pitching it to you also as a way for us to get feedback on the project or to start collaborations. But the idea in the long term is to design a sensing approach, something we call the sensing garden, that deployed in city in a very low cost, in a very lightweight way, would allow us to use insects and use sensing insect as a proxy to understand the health of cities. The second project is very different. It's still about tracking something. So most of our lab projects involve to some extent tracking, not humans, but in general either animals or even items or objects that could be used as a proxy for human activities. The second project is called bike trafficking. And here the question we have explored in collaboration with the city of Amsterdam, AMS, which is a research institute in the Netherlands, and I believe also the police in the Netherlands. What happens to bikes that get stolen in Amsterdam? I don't know if any of you have been in Amsterdam. Is the most iconic city for bikers. At the same time, it's also one of the cities in the world that have the highest number of bikes that get stolen. No one knows really what happens to those bikes. There are, like, if you go to the police, they will tell you, oh, we suspect that they're smuggled outside the country. Sometimes they found like shipments that, but there is no way, or there was no way to quantify this phenomenon. And also we found also a kind of interesting design question to see, oh, let's explore this idea in a quantitative, like in a scientific way. So what we've done was, let me see. Okay, here they should start the video. So what we've done, first, we wanted to, again, to do this in a systematic way. So we've designed a device to track the bikes, designed a device that would be embedded in the bike light, so it was not visible. At the same time, we used visual AI to assess where are the location in Amsterdam where bikes are likely to be stolen, or also based on the amount of bike on the population. So we distributed bikes with the trackers embedded in them along these locations, and then we started tracking the bikes. So due to time, I would just close here and leave you with this a bit of suspense, so you can go on our website and on our paper. But basically, in very short, what we discover is that most bikes, actually, they don't get kind of smuggled across border, but they stay in Amsterdam. So probably when you buy a bike in Amsterdam, it's also someone else's bike, and it's a sort of circular economy. We also found that many of those bikes, they also end up in canals. I think there are a few days in Amsterdam where they actually go and fish bikes out of the canals. But I think we wanted to present this to you more as a way, with like a relatively simple question. We're not kind of trying to solve to fix the world, but with a good methodology, we could have like a strong answer to something that is in common to many cities in the world, and also sometimes to debunk with facts, with data, some common misunderstandings, like that, for example, the bikes get smuggled, or someone coming from outside the city to steal bikes and take them away. No, it's basically people in Amsterdam that kind of pass these bikes along across time. That's all for us. Thanks a lot for having us.
Okay, let's get to it then. We can see myself in the camera. Aiur, will you share? Yeah, okay. Auditory footprints, again, will Dietmar think, probably. So last June, during DRS 2024 in Boston, we ran this session with experts, and Dietmar Uffenhügel was one of these experts, to try to eviscerate this speculative concept we drafted together with Sensible City and TU Delft, the Critical Alarms Lab, about auditory footprint. So what is an auditory footprint was the center of that session back in June. Turns out it's not such a successful concept as we imagined it, but basically what we were looking at was how can we identify the impact that sound has on the environment, meaning like on the broader context of our everyday life. So not considered as not necessarily the natural ecosystem. And here's a first critical difference, because a carbon footprint does have a measurable impact, which is always negative, mainly on the natural ecosystem. For us, an auditory footprint is really let's say, concept that should be able to make us move beyond what we consider sound at the moment when we do measurements to monitor how sound affects the quality of our lives and the lives of other living creatures or the non-living environment. So what we do at the moment is just we measure decibels. This is mandatory in many countries in the world. But this is a measurement, it's a quantitative measurement of the physical components of sound. It doesn't really tell us how this impacts our perception. Typical example, I am at a concert. I really want those 85 dBs to be there, because in that moment, this is not a negative experience. It's not a carbon footprint in that sense. So there is human perception, there is animal perception, which is another broad field we are trying to enter. And then there is the source of sound. Again, someone is shouting or someone is talking slightly louder than they should be in a neonatal intensive care, but these people happen to be the parents of the baby. This will not have the same effect as its nurses talking loud. So it is contextual, it depends on the source, it depends on how our perception filters it. How do we identify all these parameters and then use AI to make this screening of the acoustic environment automatized so that we can build monitoring systems, for instance, that can help us improve our everyday soundscape. And we came out with this term, auditory footprint. So, as we said, is not univocally understood. So in the second part of this, we published a report of this lab, which is online. So if you want to read it, mainly it was this: the carbon footprint is clearly measurable, is clearly negative, whereas sound is more controversial. So we have a new project now. What is the second part of this collaboration with MIT Sensible City has a specific use case, which is, can we detect by listening and then finally by automatically listening to the sounds, the efficiency of industrial production. So machines make sound. Going back to the cases that Simone presented earlier, and that will be interesting later in the workshop, animals make sound, bikes make sound, pretty much everything makes sound. So can we, by listening to these sounds, in our case today, detect whether machines are functioning properly or not, hence whether they are wasting energy or not. So how sustainable is the production? And can through this, at the end of the road, provide a more efficient solutions for the monitoring and then for the readaptation and the maintenance? So can we do predictive maintenance, for instance, of these machines in a more efficient way through sound? So first part of today, now it's up to you. We want to do a little icebreaker. It's an active listening exercise, perhaps we can call it. We will play 3 sounds that we recorded on site back in Spain. I already gave you some context because I think it's pretty much needed, or these sounds will sound totally alien. So industrial production, no need for you to know the product, we'll see it later. And the machines that you will hear are functioning differently. In general, they are deteriorating over time. So what I would like you to do now, we will play, maybe we play the 3 sound once, and then we will distribute material. So then we play it again, and you can note down things that you hear are changing in the sound, and I will guide you through it. And then perhaps after the first round or second round of listening, I will also like to have a conversation with Dietmar, so you also have to listen, on how this, this will be basically a reduced listening exercise. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but we'll ask you to focus on the characteristics of the sounds only. Don't try to think, what is this? Well, no broader context. Focus on this and see how they are traces of something that is actually happening in the real world. Maybe we can listen to 20 seconds of each. They should come from there. Next sound. Okay, so while we also focus on a more efficient way for you to listen again to these sounds, we can distribute post-its and stuff. And the idea is that you listen again and you try to make an educated guess of what this could, I already told you industrial production, but mainly, can we go next slide? Yeah, mainly please focus. We take like 10 minutes and we will go to all, make sure that maybe one person in each table can play the sounds. Can we share a link in the Zoom chat or? Okay, that works. And please, each of you take notes on things like, is there, as the sound changes, what are the main changes that you can understand? Is there a rhythmical pattern that changes within the 3 blocks? How does the pitch of the sound changes? How does the loudness changes? What, and any other emotional reaction that these sounds give you, emotional, as in any basically reaction as you hear the sound. Are they irritating? Are they, I don't know, do they make you feel relaxed? You would be surprised how many YouTube groups are with that people that share sounds of hair dryers or hoovers, because it's like almost white noise, like sea sound, and makes people relax, people that have difficulties in sleeping. Maybe that's an effect. Try to be very broad.
I have a question. Are those 3 sounds coming from the same source?
Yeah, it's the same machine that functions differently over time. And this is exactly what we want to detect in our project. It will be difficult for you to detect it now. It's just an exercise for you to focus on the sound quality and how it changes. So it's the same machine. It has to do with textile production. But let's say at this stage is irrelevant. But depending on how well the machine is functioning, the sound changes. But for now, let's just try to identify how it changes. Do we have each table with someone that can play the sound? It would be a lot of sounds. We play it again for everybody, yeah.
Where can we find the Zoom link again? Where can we find the Zoom link, and maybe we can hear locally with my own headphones?
If you have headphones, that's also the Zoom link.
Where's the link?
But if you yeah, scan this, you will be.
So this URL gives us access to the sound files. So this.
Yes, please. For the online audience, do we have a Miro board? You done, or we'll share a Miro where you can add post-its, and you can follow the same. Can we anyway? Paste the URL even if it's very long in the Zoom chat, so people will go there. Oh, okay. And then suddenly, sorry, do you want us to play it again for everybody from the big speakers? Yes, right? Okay, so already these two are quite different, right? In number of things. Try to note down whether it's more the pitch that is different, loudness is different, anything about the rhythmical pattern that these sounds make. Anything about, is it more irritating, less irritating, neutral? Neutral doesn't really exist, but.
So for the ones.
Yeah, and for those online, there is
So for the online participants, you can go to this first part of the mirror and use post-its to write whatever you like. Yeah. So I already see some people.
Okay, good. And do you want to listen to the third sound, or yeah, we keep going? Maybe we recap on the second difference from. And this is a video. Fantastic sound. Yeah. We really want a machine to listen to this, not humans. That would be already a good result. So, do you have some notes already?
Yep.
Okay, good. And maybe Dietmar, I'd like to involve you somehow. You can sit there. Anyone that wants to share how they feel about this sound. So what did you note down? How does the pitch change, for instance? Is it always the same?
No, it's not. Number 3 has a higher pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Are we sure that the conditions under which this sound has been recorded is the same?
Yeah.
How do you control that?
So we asked the technicians that work at the footwear industrial plant to record the sounds for us. They also sent us videos of the moment they were recording, and the conditions they were recording, the positions they were recording. And of course, we tried to keep the conditions as much as possible identical, which means the position of the microphone and the type of action that the machine is doing were the same. The machine was the same. The building where the machine is installed was the same. But the machine is working in a different way. So maybe we can already do some spoiling because it's easier to understand the context. So from the first sound, the lower frequency, to the last sound, the machine, the knives that the machine has, we'll show, maybe it's a good moment to show the video, are deteriorating. So on the lower pitch, the first sound, the machine is functioning properly. And then in the second, is functioning so-so, and in the third, the knives are spoiled, so it's functioning quite poorly. Maybe before or maybe we show the video and then I ask Dietmar a couple of questions. So this is a promo video in Spanish.
En materias primas de bajo.
This is the plant where we recorded the sounds.
En la planta piloto de industria circular, le damos una segunda vida a los residuos de calzado, textil y juguete, convirtiéndolos en materias primas de bajo impacto ambiental. El mayor logro hasta la fecha de este demostrador está en la capacidad de separar y clasificar productos multicomposición, como es el caso del calzado, el cual emplea de media unos 40 materiales diferentes, que terminan en vertederos o incinerados. De hecho, se estima que al año 3 millones de toneladas de residuos de calzado, textil y juguete acaban en los vertederos españoles. Con esta innovadora planta de recuperación de residuos, buscamos ayudar a las empresas a impulsar un modelo de producción y consumo responsable que minimice la generación de residuos a la vez que potencie su revalorización y reciclado al final de su vida útil.
So it's a machine that separates the component of old shoes and to then be recycled. And then they use it to manufacture new shoes. So it's basically that grinder that you saw that sounded like that. And as it gets damaged, the pitch definitely gets higher. Any other change in the sound that you noticed? Yeah. Yeah, the last sound definitely sounds like, maybe is having more difficulties. Online, is there any comment? I can't read.
Different materials?
The materials are the same.
There's a resonance phenomenon that is changing over time.
Yeah. For me, that was the most interesting because I can understand maybe that. So Dietmar was saying there's a resonance in the last sound. We can play it then again. The idea I got is that must be some kind of artifact with so the frequency gets higher. And then the shape of the machine reflects. That's the explanation I gave myself, but it could be totally wrong because there is like an echo. There is something that happens. Maybe we can read online comments. So the lower pitched rhythmic sound in the first clip is gradually overtaken, second and third. Higher pitched white noise. Yeah. Caused by the loosening or deterioration of the machinery, causing greater extraneous sound as energy is lost in each movement. Wow. Thank you. Maybe we can refresh the acoustic memory by playing only the first and the last sound. Aiur. What we call Yeah, I agree that there is this sort of resonance, but that to me sounds more like metal. I don't know. That's why I was wondering whether it vibrates with the material or the shape of the machine as the frequency change. So last year, yeah, I think we started a quick exploration with Dietmar and Paolo. about the potential of another concept that is autographic sonification. So my field is data sonification, how you use sound to represent data. But we were wondering, along with the work of Dietmar on autographic design, what would be the autographic components of sound? So what is the information that is already contained in the sounds we hear? That's why earlier I talked about active listening. So if we really focus on the subtlety of these material components of sound, what are the information we can get? How are these traces of what's happening to the machine? It's actually in there, in the sound, or this is what we hope, but it seems that we all felt that the sound changes as the machine stops working properly. You want to add anything, Dietmar? Or I mean,
sounds plausible. Yeah. But I mean, we can definitely talk more about you know, because it's the autographic concept sounds a little bit misplaced, because it's not about writing. Autographic is like self-writing, but here we're not talking about written phenomena. But you know, in signal processing, we still talk about signatures, you know, like auditory signatures that help us recognize something. So here's again the writing metaphor. So I think this metaphor of the auditory footprint actually, you know, for me it makes sense because it's not just a metaphor. There is a literal truth to it. If you think about a sound wave is an imprint in air. Yeah. So of course it's kind of a dynamic phenomenon. So it goes away very quickly, unlike a footprint on the ground. But of course the physical traces, the footprints also change. So a trace is always a dynamic phenomenon. So I think that is a kind of an interesting tension.
Yeah, I think in this case, perhaps it is also more appropriate in this specific case, because we can measure, in fact, the impact of the machine working less well on the energy waste, which is what we are trying to monitor in this case. So it is a literally, it could be similar to the carbon.
But if you're talking about auditory traces, part of the ways in which they're traced is through memory. So they are actual traces in the brain, and how that intersects with memory is how you deal with what the context through the processing from the individual, and why you have such different processing of the actual auditory, what it means based on the memories and the interaction with individual memories. So.
No, I love this, because I mean, this idea that the memory is a physical trace in the brain is also a very old idea. I mean, this has come up in the 19th century first. But I think it also relates to a second thing that is very important here, is that listening is always a repeated practice to be able to make those choices. So for example, if... In
order to understand it, in order to have the traces, yeah.
Because if we, you know, because the machine sound is a very familiar example for most of us. If we notice that something is wrong with the engine of our car, we usually, you know, notice it because it sounds different. But none of us is really, or most of us are probably not car mechanics to really understand how the engine works. But we still notice it because we hear it every day and we notice the difference. So this kind of repeated exposure to certain sounds is something, is a kind of a cognitive, you know, function that we are not always aware of. There's a very interesting experiment that Barry Blasser did, that is in the Spaces Speak book described, where they asked people, if you walk by a room blindfolded, would you be able to tell if the door is open or closed? And everyone said, no, I mean, no way I can find it out. Then they tried it out and everyone was able to do it. So they walked down a corridor with many doors. Some doors were open, some doors were closed, and people could tell just based on the space, how the space sounded like, whether the door was open or closed. So we have this ability to act on sounds, even if we are not aware of it. And there's also this basic idea that our vision gives us information about the surfaces of things, but sound hearing always tells us about the interiority or about the causality, because it's a dynamic phenomenon.
Well, I don't have more comments on this specific. Thank you. Well, I don't have specific comments on each of these, recordings, because anyone who preceded me provided better ones. But I'm really interested by this idea of auditory footprint. It's just a suggestion, and I hope it's useful for you. I teach aesthetics. I'm a researcher in aesthetics. And this idea of a tension between quantifiable and non-quantifiable aspects of experience is absolutely crucial to my research. And there's a colleague of mine from Aalto University in Finland. He has worked on the notion of aesthetic footprint as opposed to ecological footprint, which is easier to quantify. It's negative, as you said. And on the other hand, there's this idea of aesthetic footprint, which is more positive. It's more difficult to, sort of frame, precisely because it's more related to the qualitative aspects of our experience. And it has to do with our experience here and now, because we're individuals, sensible, perceptual, expressive individuals experiencing here and now. But at the same time, it has to do with experiences somewhere else and at some other time. So it has to do with what we do right now and the consequences that our choices or the choices other makes for us might have somewhere else and at some other times. So I think that maybe if you're interested, I can give you the, the references, but I think that it complements nicely what you guys are talking about here, and you are complementing nicely what my colleague talked about in his article on the aesthetic footprint. So thank you very much for this.
That sounds really, in fact, appropriate, because it's about sensorial experience in that definition of aesthetics. As you were saying earlier, we are still fighting in our faculty of engineering, as many design researchers, I suppose, to convince our colleagues that aesthetics is not about beauty. So I totally agree with the concept. I see exactly where it comes from. So is there also, does he or she propose a way to measure this in this specific field of soundscape or acoustic environment studies? Then the big obstacle is, how do you measure this so that, for instance, a machine can filter through it properly? How do you convince municipalities that making noise maps that only measure decibels is not an efficient way to monitor the quality of the soundscape? But then when you get down to practicalities, they need a tool, they send technicians that they pay, and then they have to come up with something simple to efficiently, quantitatively measure this footprint. So that's the space we are working on at the moment. Find the balance and be able to integrate this perceptual, sensorial knowledge, these traces, into a protocol that is really measurable in that sense.
So, but I have a question here. I mean, is it really about qualitative versus quantitative? Because, if I basically just measure a noise decibel value, I just have one number. But if I record a sound, I have many numbers in, I have a temporal phenomenon. So, I mean, I'm still in a, somewhat quantitative realm, but now I have to figure out the internal relationships between all these data points. And it's similar like in, let's say, network analysis, you have a very complex structure that has a lot of internal relationships. And when you try to figure out what's going on in there, you slip into the qualitative realm very quickly. And even, if you arrive at these kind of qualifications through metrics and measures that you make up in order to capture some of these things. So, but I think the exploratory process is maybe you know, more open-ended and slightly different.
Yeah, I mean, soundscape studies, for instance, they also do end up with quantitative results of the perceptual appreciation, which is qualitative in the sense that it's filtered by human listening. But then, you know, you tag your circumplex with the typical dimensions that have been codified, like is a sound pleasant or unpleasant or chaotic or calm, and then you come up with a statistical analysis that is clearly quantifiable. And then we have loudness. I mean, noise maps are done with how loudness evolves over time, and this is also a way to account for human perception of noise levels. What was the question?
No, I mean,
I mean, there are ways, in fact, still, personally, I feel is not enough yet. The big, I think, difference is to quantify our intention in listening, where we can perhaps find a bridge to design research and the value of that. So typically in soundscape studies, you will involve people to define whether this sound is pleasant or unpleasant, but they are listening to it with headphones and labeling visualization of the waveform, which is a limited, is a reductive approach to what is listening actively in context. So how to account for that? Yeah, please.
But I mean, maybe it's just, obviously it's talking about a really different study, but it does seem like the two different issues, which is how contextual our own experience is and how that determines how we experience things, but together with the complexity of the various levels and how they interact, right, which is very complex. It seems like there are particular types of musical sound that are interpreted in particular ways in particular cultural contexts, which could be analyzed in relationship to not a musical analysis, but I think, for instance, about the research on music being used as torture and what that means, and where it's decibel, which connects with the impact of music as torture, versus the decibel studies of orchestral players, which show that the decibel for brass and percussion in the back of an orchestra are causing auditory harm, but are not unpleasant. So there you have two contrasting experiences which are dealing with high volume, and yet all sorts of obvious differences are actually, but we can't analyze, I mean, we can analyze it musically, but we can't analyze it the way you're analyzing it in terms of the nature of the sounds. And it seems like that kind of analysis, which could be quite complex and could deal with all sorts of different sort of case studies, would actually start to give you the kind of information about the complexity of the network, the, you know, sort of in different cultural contexts. Anyway, just an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the goal of soundscape studies, in a way, is this. There is the big question of multiculturality now, for instance, and of course of the personal history of those who you involve to listen and classify the sounds. That's perhaps why machine listening is also so poorly developed compared to images. Yeah, you need also a high volume of, yeah.
So being a violist and a composer, I'm used to my daughter hating my music, thinking it's torture, and my peers in the orchestra also thinking the sound is torture. But I think in this case, whether it's positive or negative or aesthetically beautiful or certainly musical, doesn't matter, right? I think what we have here is, and I think what the most effective aspect of what's going on here is that you have a normal sound state and you have a non-normal sound state. And they can be compared and contrasted by humans, but certainly way more effectively by a machine, right? And so once you identify what that sound state is, you can then put into an algorithm that says something is working or broken, and then from there, talk about this notion of efficiency, which really is an incredibly helpful, useful tool. So I'm not sure why we're talking so much about music in this case, because whether this is beautiful music or not doesn't really matter. It can be, but that's not the context in which we're listening here. So I think this is really exciting, but I'm worried about the way we're talking about aesthetics and application and beauty and positive and negative. I think it's a very functional thing. And also one last thing, the whole notion of timbre as a stamp. Back in the matter, when we're kids, we can hear a sound once and can trauma us, and we'll recognize that sound, even if it heard only once. 30, 40 years later, if we hear it again, we'll remember it, right? So timbre is incredibly powerful for the brain to remember that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. So with the time we have left, why don't we go back, in fact, to this case? And we would like to ask you, maybe you are sitting, already kind of grouped, or maybe those that are sitting in separate tables could group. And we would like you to help us to imagine solutions to this problem of the machine malfunctioning by listening to these sounds. I mean, when I say imagining solutions, would you be willing to brainstorm quickly for a few minutes on how could we fix the machine, not that we fix the machine, but how could we provide controllers of the industrial plant with a solution to their problem of losing efficiency by listening to the sound. I mean, can we imagine, I don't know, we place microphones next to the machine and we create this monitoring stuff that sends out an alarm. Are we able to do this exercise, or we use an app, or how could be an efficient way of doing that? And you are also more than welcome to take it from this very practical problem that we have, try to broaden a little bit the scope. We talked biodiversity earlier, we talked bikes stolen. Can we imagine other applications that by listening or by machine listening to the sounds around us, we can solve particular problems? I am particularly intrigued by the monitoring of biodiversity loss through sound, but then animals make sounds in the different frequency ranges. And there are animals that are particularly tiny, like insects. But can we imagine ways in which this would be, in fact, helpful and useful to provide tangible solutions? Like 10 minutes for that? Just an exercise, basically to reflect whatever you got from today. Do you see it as an applicable? Do you see it as something that has potential? Active listening and potentially replicated by machines. They will have to go through a long training, though, to account for all the contextual experiences. Maybe we can go through the tables and help you.
Sort of algorithm to be good. So where should we start? Detect changes in the sound that humans couldn't detect right away. I think you can find those issues a lot quicker, like fix them a lot quicker. On the machine. Yeah, there were kind of early characters. Like I'm sure the machine like vibrates and True. Yeah, I guess it becomes more physical vibrations rather than like air vibrations. But it could, I do wonder if that would end.
The challenge with a problem like that, every machine is, different machines are going to break the ice. So it's not like you're going to come up with a solution and then just every machine has to have, you have to learn what it sounds like when it's not working, so that you have, that's going to be it's a really hard thing to do sonically, to analyze a signal for certain things. If you have a machine that creates a kind of squeaking sound when it's broken, and that squeak has a frequency that otherwise, if it's there, got a problem, but.
Okay, so for the ones online, we could, if you like to participate, we could also switch to the second frame where there's nothing. And maybe come up with solutions here or things that you would suggest we could do with this kind of principles or this kind of use of sound. So if you are willing to participate like that, would be nice. Thanks.
Because every machine is different anyway. So you're just looking for machine learning to hear the differences.
I mean, like budget regression, being people like how a machine can function. One, there could be like any and object. You mentioned like machine. Yeah. You can do like budget regression algorithm that will like, you know, the machine figures 0 or 1. The machine is functioning properly or not.
I was just thinking this is all like, you can never be like entirely certain probably just from a machine. Like this is definitely broken. I mean, like you can be very certain, but nothing's ever like 100%. So I feel like this would all have to be in terms of probabilities or something, and then maybe like if it was above a certain threshold, then it would like trigger some sort of.
There's a 60% chance that this machine is. There are two ways to go about it then. One is to learn what the machine should sound like. Or the other one might be if there's a particular problem. The machine always sounds a certain way because of the problem. Context is
Science cooks.
how does the machine break?
I would assume whoever wants either whoever of like sound stuff. I would assume that didn't have like the main. Yeah, there'd be like could just like shoot them a little note.
It's very hard
like,
to look
check
for spectral.
something might be in the sound machine. Really check on it.
Because of the way that, phases and different magnitudes are always, even in something that sounds to us very similar, the data itself can be something that looks very different. So, I mean, one way to think about that is there's actually like a kind of an infinite number of different spectral makeups that produce the same exact data. Because you can take all the frequency components and change the phase, it creates a different wave shape, it creates the spectral analysis.
The versus the thing I wonder is,
so it's really hard to figure it out. I would just look for anomalies, look for when it's acting right.
Having the sound senses as being different. I wonder if there's a way to how that's sort of kind of imagining.
And that's the problem, like I said, is like a suite that's only there when it's broken. You absolutely know exactly what the
difference in sound. Like you have like the normal sound, and then like again the one that's different, almost like everything in like the messed up sound that like
break a bunch of machines. That's a great point, actually. So that would maybe be a factor that goes into how you can do it. Are you going to model the proper behavior of this? That would be a problem. A lot of money on machines.
The human might not be able to tell. Just like listening into two sounds areas, and the machine could get it wrong. Way to just hear, like, if there's like a certain frequency or something that's higher, you can hear that little difference.
That makes another problem. Yeah.
The idea about the biodiversity is kind of interesting. I mean, it's a similar thing, right? You're looking for the signature, sonic signatures of different insects in an ecosystem, and you put microphones out, and you can just listen. And I think that would be pretty hard.
So it's always a negative and kind
of like literally you're minusing what's right here. sure there's.
I was thinking about soundscape hosts that really interacting with that reality from public transportation, especially on train. Yes, unless you're wearing headphones or something, people just don't really care about anything, And in that case, how would you fix an atmosphere which is not working? There, it's not something like concerning efficiency. Efficiency of an ecosystem, efficiency of
universities involved.
There it's a social kind of, if there's pollution, kind of pollution.
That's a subjective statement, though, right? 'Cause I could be on that train going to work, love the noise and music, and I'm closing my eyes and really enjoying it.
That's perfect. I'm just saying, but you are affected. Because it's not just.
I think that's interesting.
Or do they just have like that's not subjective. There's a social thing, I guess, right? It's not subjective, I think. And you can listen to noise, heavy metal, whatever. It's absolutely fine. The problem is like, how do you negotiate between your subjective like last
you have
actually
that case is just on and off.
That's very, intersubjective.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's kind of like your noise space, invading someone else's space.
Imagine you could probably apply it to like healthcare and stuff. So like, I feel like there's ways.
I mean, I guess you could measure that.
Yeah, I mean,
So what are you looking at? Like, how do you, can you measure that?
Like how the sound use, like the difference in their voice, or like ways that their voice makes sound.
Neurotic. It's like
they can use that to like help time.
At 7 a.m. when you're commuting.
Yeah, heartbeat, obviously. Yeah.
And I realize to do with a malfunction of work.
Maybe.
I don't know, but it's harder to put on an efficiency scale. It's like how you turn that into like an action or like that.
Because I feel like it would be hard to do that on everybody else scale as much as we're like that's kind of the question that I keep having for a lot of these is like, how it's the whatever the analysis or the conclusions that and algorithms are communicated to. That's effective.
This is
And that's I don't know how it besides like I don't know your headphones sort of telling like you have your headphones on and just
we're kind of like our brain is like so much of it
measuring
psychological
and it's
kind of
like
tuning out the sound of times. So like even our voice sounds different to us when we're speaking. Help us like anything's going on.
Some others that are still a problem because they are. I think we're talking about
how to like interpret sounds.
like how are you able to tell the one yelling?
And it's not like maybe it's it's still a public space, but there's negative environment. But still, it's not
like her joints make sounds kind of. I feel the bones creak sometimes due to digestive
Right, like privacy, like the whole, like we're being surveilled so much.
Maybe can you say this?
Yeah, sure.
It could be of interest
It's
to
kind of
them.
not really recognized.
Yeah, like
And then you determine
it's beyond just organization.
it's an interesting point.
They kind of chose whatever they wanted.
Not make any.
So they established a certain kind of language.
Okay, everybody, I think we need to wrap up, right, Paolo? We have another part coming up. And maybe we can ask each group-ish to report. I mean, if you can comment something. I've already asked one group to Chris to repeat what he just told me, because I think it's super interesting. It's something that I didn't know. We also have a suggestion online that sounds quite appropriate. Can we have a microphone? So talking about sound AI and potentially monitoring specific phenomena in the city, I've just learned that.
I've used some software that analyzes a scene and then breaks down into various stems or various kind of tracks, if you will, of the identifying of the different elements of the environment. Say you are on a busy street, that's the low rumble of the bus, and then that's the traffic that goes by, that's a conversation that's had over here, that's the radio that's going on. And you could actually, with this particular, it's not perfect, but with this software, you can divide and identify those elements. And then for something like this, you would be able to determine what is the function of that. The whine is the blades, for instance. The low end rumble is the engine. And then you would want to determine what affects that and how when the sound changes, it means it is less efficient, it is more efficient.
Yeah.
And then you're able to do that on multiple levels.
That's fantastic. That's why we need more industry research opportunities to talk, because I read tons of papers about machine listening and created these low-cost networks of sensors to, and lots of papers and long research to identify different traffic sounds, like to distinguish a bus from a motorbike or from a car. And then you tell me this, which sounds exactly the thing you would want to have. So thank you. We have a comment online that says, thinking about live webcams of various animals are available on explore.org. Some of them are taking live video of bird nests every year. They also have audio. Most people are interested in watching the video, but could something be done with the audio? That's pretty much a full database that we would have there to explore. Do birds make somewhat different noises year to year, depending on the weather conditions, or maybe their sound scores are changing as a result of climate change? In terms of fauna, especially birds, there's a lot about sound. I would say that machine listening has been applied mainly to distinguish birds, how they move and migrate through the world. Would there be a way to use machine listening AI to track this? Well, one of the biggest problems is access to databases, and then access to data, actually, to recordings, and then labeling these recordings. So it's very good suggestion. Thank you. Anyone there? Last comment? No?
We were like, so in terms of like other applications for it, we were talking about like how it could be used for healthcare, because like, kind of currently, like one example of kind of what's going on now is like heart rate, and just like listening for differences in heart rate. That's been happening for a long time, but there's like a lot of other aspects of the body that make sound that we kind of tune out a lot of the time, like our breathing and our we're even like the sound of our blood circulation, our digestive system. And I think like if there were a machine listening algorithm or something similar that can maybe detect things that are really subtle or quiet or things that we don't always hear that could also be, used to help diagnose certain things. And yeah, like we were, in terms of like actually analyzing the differences between sounds too, we were like wondering if there's ways to like, rather than just listening to kind of the normal sound and then, the sound that has something messed up in it, like there could be ways to sort of like cancel out all of the elements of the normal sound and only hear the difference, essentially like subtracting the two. So like, we were talking about like the kind of the resonance that was more prominent in, the sound of the deteriorated machine. Like you would like to help the human understand the difference there, you could just listen to that. You could kind of get rid of all of the rest of the sound that's kind of there all the time, and only really hear that little difference there. We thought that could be interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Both are awesome suggestions. I'm aware of research in the sonification world, or auditory display community, one that I saw recently about detecting, in fact, heart diseases in remote areas of Chile. It was in Chile, so providing residents with kits, like field kits, that they can, a simple sensor, they can vibrate, like a piezoelectric, simple microphone they can use to monitor their heart, and then this gets sent to the hospital digitally, and then the doctors will listen, because this is basically what they do, to detect any issue in there. Yeah, we are countdown for.
So just to really quickly add to that, I mean, Apple, right, which has the iWatch and headphones, right, being sent around the world, are now going to be investing actually billions of dollars, right, and to see everything they can do by listening in real time to what's happening, that you can get through this watch, all kinds of data, which they are basically going to call music as medicine, or sound as medicine. So there's a huge growing field in this area.
Interesting, because what triggered our collaboration with MIT Sensible City was, in fact, the research question was, what activity can you infer from sound? Not listening to conversations, which is something they've been doing already for ages, but step forward by listening to the sounds we make, like at home. What can they understand of our habits and, of course, our health? Big time. Okay, I think. Thank you, everybody, for this very open session, because we are at the beginning of research in this field. So any comment, you being here, anything you wrote down, anything you wrote on the mirror online, people, is really valuable for our research. And I guess we'll keep you posted. And over to the event.
So we have a last moment in this session about data and sound. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about this announcement, because we started working with data and sonification a few years ago, and then after a while connecting with people working in the field, we realized that there was no shared idea of, of course, what data sonification is, but also what a good data sonification is or might be. So what is a good practice? What is a good way of developing sonification with data? That wasn't really necessarily clear to the community that we started to meet, when we started with Sara to work in this field. So that's why we, on a certain point, we decided, together with Duncan Gear, that is not here in person, but you will hear something from him, to think about a collective way to define what a good data sonification might be. Hence the idea of the Data Sonification Awards, that we like to frame not as awards in the sense that we commonly understand. So there is no prize, there is no money, there is no, we don't give really a prize. But the idea is really to recognize what an excellent, a good data sonification might be, using the collective intelligence of people that engaged with us along the way with the Data Sonification Archive that we put together. So last year and a half ago, so we decided to launch this initiative. So why don't we create something that doesn't exist yet, that is there's an award for recognizing the excellence, as is written here. That's the claim in data sonification. So as I said, there are some ideas what sonification is, and maybe Sara, if you want to say something about this, yeah, because maybe we are talking about that, and I don't know if we here have a common understanding of what data sonification is, but there's been a change also in that. You know, when we started to work in this field, we had this definition in mind, but then along the way, that changed, right?
Yeah. Actually, we published a recent article that also reviews how the definitions of data sonification evolved. This is the, let's say, the groundbreaking truth that is often quoted in research papers, but that was very quantitative, if we want to go back to our previous discussion. Also, it excludes speech as in semantic use of sound, but then there are art projects. We did bump into art projects that also use speech, so it all depends on your intention, what you really need to achieve. So and also that definition doesn't have any reference to listening, to humans, to what you are trying to communicate. So over the years, there's been this polarity always, data-centric or listener-centric. And there's a recent definition that we feel closer to, also co-authored by Per Magnus Lindborg, with whom we collaborate also in the archive and with this recent analysis. So that tends really to balance the need to reflect on what we want to communicate with using sound to represent data. Why sound? Why this type of sound? Why in this context? We've been having data visualization for ages and it works. That's the classic thing that we hear. And then we say, yeah, but there is an added value that is also referred to what we were saying, what we've been saying the whole morning. So the way that we humans listen to sound in a context, the way it affects our feelings, our emotions, our memories, and also as a functional goal. And there is a variety of uses of sonification that with the Data Sonification Archive, we really wanted to start mapping.
Yeah, and in fact, when we engage in this field, as designers, we took both like the theoretical approach, so like, reviewing those definitions and trying to understand better what this field is, but also a very practical, empirical approach that is like observing. That's the Data Sonification Archive you might be familiar with, that really started with a need of observing what was going on, looking at the different areas. Was when we started was more like artists on one side and scientists on the other doing data sonification, but then along the way we had more and more designers engaging in the field, but we really wanted to observe what was going on, and that's why we created this archive that is now becoming like a function, is a kind of a gathering place, for a venue for people to convene around. But there now we have like 500 cases, more than that now. And the award also functioned as a kind of a booster for people to, be part of the archive. So that was also part of the plan, create a kind of a system around this community. And we have, I think what is also producing as an interesting result is this attempt of, encoding in a way these projects into metadata, and that's something that we release in open source. So this collectively, we're also creating data that describe what data sonification is in the way we came up with. But we are always open, like, to rethink, reshape this database in a way that reflects better what data sonification is or might be. And this data that we have often lead to interesting analysis. It's not.
Why? For whom?
Okay, sorry, I don't hear. Yeah, this is just basic questions that we ask ourselves by defining the data. But as I said, it enabled us reflecting on the nature of data sonification. For example, the fact that often, as you will see, if you attend the concert that we have this evening, many cases data sonification is not alone, so it plays together with visualization, for example, and so I think having this data really enables us to analyze and better understand the field. So usually most of the cases that we have in the archive, as I said, more than 500 now, address the general public, so are meant to communicate to or share something with a broad public. The research is still an important component. I mean, that's not a statistical representation of the field, but that's what we collected. But public engagement and art are still a big part of that. But you can come up with your own analysis on the data. As I said, it's available for everybody to analyze. And we started to combine different dimensions of these data sets and see, for example, how, the complementing visualization, for example, is used across both art and analysis. So that's interesting. So it's not just a matter of engagement and making the sonification more appealing, but it's sometimes helping also in the analysis. So complementing sound and visual, for example. So I think that's just suggestions and ideas for using the data that we created as a source for understanding better the field. We did that also. You can do that by separating, for example, that's something that we have done for astronomy. For example, you can go vertical on some topics and see if there is any changes in the way sonification is used. But again, just hints on how the data that we created together with the archive can be used. Astronomy still plays a big role in terms of topic. Yeah, it's a love story.
In fact, this afternoon will be at the astrophysics.
Yeah, exactly. The concert where I was talking about, there is a concert about the project that we awarded collectively. It will be in the astrophysics at Harvard. They have a little auditorium, so 5:30 p.m. If you are welcome to join us for that. But now, without further ado, I think it's time to announce the projects that met in a way the criteria that we as a community discussed. I mean, what we will do, we'll just announce the names of the projects. So I don't know if that makes much sense for you, but it will for the people that are attending or that will see the recording of this event, because they are the authors of those projects. But maybe what I find the titles sometimes very intriguing, and they reveal, I think, a number of potential ways of framing sonification. And you will see I made a sort of analysis of how titles reflect in a way the field. So you will see that there is a huge difference between how people title projects, sonification projects in the art, and how people do that in the analysis. But I'll let this insight to you later. First and foremost, I wanted to thank the three chairs of the different sections. The Data Sonification Award has been, we defined 3 different categories. So it's art, communication, and analysis. We had Jordan Wilfbrook for communication, Jamie Pereira for art, and Yon for analysis. These are our chairs that had the role of coordinating the judges volunteering that time and we have one judge here that joined us in person. Thank you for coming. So it was really a very open call to people judging, and then we selected as applications, and we got people that work in the field in relation with these 3 different categories, and we invited them to help us judging and evaluating the work. The criteria are very articulated, so I didn't bring the criteria here because it's a long reading, but I suggest you go on the website of the Data Sonification Awards, and you have a very clear description of the criteria. And that's, again, a collective work. So together with all the people that wanted to participate, and that's thanks to the Decibel community that Duncan Gear launched on Discord, I think, that's the channel. So we really ran this criteria to all the people that we knew in the field and asked for comment and feedback, and we got a lot of feedback. And so also the way the criteria have been shaped is it's a collective work. That's really the purpose, is to reflect in a way the community. But I think, as I say, Duncan Gear is not here, our partner in crime in this initiative, but he sent us a video that I think kind of summarizes more or less everything I said, and even more, like, what is the vision and the ambition of this initiative. This is Duncan. Sorry, Duncan, for not being able to play the video correctly for now, but we'll try later after announcing the names of the projects that we awarded. So these are the three areas, the three categories for the awards. So analysis about research-driven projects that advance knowledge and understanding of data sonification in the academic business context, and communication is about using sonification to effectively communicate concepts and stories to large and small audiences, and art is sonification projects that contribute to the field of art and expressive, creative, and aesthetic perspectives. So, I mean, these are our definitions, again, of the community that is behind the Data Sonification Awards. And now, wow, sorry for that. We announce the names first, starting with the field of analysis. And again, look at the titles. I think they're pretty interesting. First awarded project is audio augmented reality using sonification to enhance visual art experiences. Auditory feedback in tele-rehabilitation based on automated gate classification is the second project. Hydrogen bonding heterogeneity correlates with protein folding transition state passage time as a etc. So, long titles. Interactive multimodal integral field spectroscopy. Ocular stethoscope auditory support for retinal membrane peeling. That's the next project. And real-time weighting sound to convey limb swing kinematics during walking rehabilitation. That's the other project. And Samson is sonification of multidimensional data in Conan maps. Son A, the design of a sonification of radar data for air traffic control. Sonic weather, that's shorter. And sonification of hyperspectral data in the NASA Mass Archive tool, or David's. The 2018 caldera collapse sequence at Kilauea volcano, and the sounds of decoherence, and last, I think, is Vision Rehabilitation and Assistive Technology Expo 2024 Exhibit Hall Map. So a round of applause for this projects awarded. So as I say, very long titles, very, I think, descriptive of the intention with the use of data sonification. So Sara, if you want to join me to announce the next category.
Happily, there will be arts. Fantastic. Back to my origins. Yeah. So I think we had quite a few submissions in arts. That was very interesting. We will have a debrief meeting after everything is wrapped up to really analyze and share with all participants, I guess, the trends in this first edition. So let's start. Acoustic shadows. You're right, titles are quite different. Aurora for flute and Max MSP Jitter, which is a software for those of you who know, for real-time sound processing. Balearization. Happy to hear that we're a group coming from Bilbao, another person from Catalonia. So this is Balearic Island. Biocao, music generated by plants from San Luis Potosí. Bristol burning. There's also a nice geographic. Yeah. Broken numbers, broken waves. Emerging. Wuhan Hu 1. Forest for the trees. Yeah, titles are definitely more suggestive than self-explanatory, evocative. Yeah. Fungi. Hope I pronounced it correctly. I think Duncan helped me the other day. Human muosine 3, protein sonification. Land music. Luminosity, max 0723. Macro microscope, shifting scales in a heating world. More to come. Macrobial symphony. Was this the last one?
No, there is another column.
Wow, movements of a remnant. Let's say the size of the volume of apps projects was quite high. Our Things, version 2. Polysomnophony, the music of sleep. Yep. Sastrugi, sounds of the Antarctic sea ice. Scorched earth. Sounding numbers. Temporal tide. Nice titles. The Carrington event. The conscious ear. Yeah, we can definitely run some analysis on the titles. The reef. Should I?
Yep.
Yeah, the reef was the last one. So
for art.
For art. Thank you.
The third category, communication, is kind of in between in terms of submissions. Art was definitely the biggest. Also communication well represented. And here are the names of the winners. A Decade of Magma Dynamics at Kilauea Volcano, Hold the Line, Hydrological Soundscapes, New York City Evictions Sonification, Orchestra of the Elements, Sonification of Total Solar Eclipse 2024. Sony Friday is an initiative that incorporates different projects. Will go quickly. Is a collection. Early Birds, Flood of the Century, From Sky to Glass, How We Eco, and This is a Man's World Almost. And also there is one. This is fine. That's the last of the Sony Friday collection. Sonifying the Dynamics of School Discipline Disparities, Stromato Live, the 2015 actual seamount eruption, The Cave, Universe of Sound, Vandalizing Sigur Rós, Opipola, to inspire action on wildlife decline, Warming Stripe Sonification, and that's it for communication. So a round of applause for all these projects. And yeah, last least, I mean, I really want to give share a round of applause for like the judges that helped us see the people like last year, like they were crucial for getting this evaluation done. You know, without them, this wouldn't have been possible. So thank you for the judges. So that's all, and thank you, Duncan and Sara, for partnering in this initiative. Yeah, we can try again if it works with Duncan's message before closing the session. Yeah, and all the projects that have been awarded, there is a little prize. There is not little for people working in the field because it's the possibility to they get a free license to plugin for Ableton, and maybe you want to say a few words about it.
The Sonification tools by Manifest Audio. It's a plugin that integrates with Ableton Live, which is one of the most common softwares in the industry, to do data sonification. And so the founder of Manifest Audio, Noah, offered actually kindly to provide a free license to all the awarded projects. And today, later today, let's say in 4 hours, so 3 p.m. Boston time, there will be an online session, actually quite a good session because it's 1 hour and a half with Noah to go through everything you can do with the sonification tools. So any of the awardees who are listening online, well, everybody has received an email and will receive another reminder later to connect. But it's an open session. So if you are using the tools or if you are considering using the tools, which I very much recommend, then please join the session because the very person that knows them inside out will be there to answer your questions.
Yeah, we can share the link to Ableton.
Yeah. What did you say that tool is called?
They are called the Sonification tools, Manifest Audio. You look them up by Manifest Audio.
That's it for the awards, and yeah, if you are interested in applying for the future, go to the website and there are the criteria, and we will reopen soon the application process. And it was the first time that we did that, so apologies for all the little glitches. That will try to improve the process for next year. But thanks again for the collective effort of judges, chairs, and of course to all the people that submitted their work. Thank you very much.